When I walked into the apartment and saw my phone smashed on the floor, I already knew. He'd seen them. He didn't say anything at first, just stood in the kitchen with that blank, heavy silence men get when they want you to speak first, so they can pretend they're the calm ones. I waited too. Finally, he said, 50 videos. I blinked. What? He didn't raise his voice, didn't throw anything, didn't even look at me. He just said very calmly, I counted 50 of you and him, and you did things with him you won't even consider with me. That's when my heart dropped. Not because I was guilty, but because I knew there was no coming back from this. Not because of the videos, but because of what he'd say next. And sure enough, he didn't disappoint. How could you be that girl for him? And then act like I'm asking too much? I stood there, trying to breathe evenly, but something in me cracked. Not the kind of crack that breaks you. The kind that opens the door for the truth to walk in. So I looked him dead in the eye and said, because you never deserved her. And that was it. His face twisted, like I'd slapped him. He opened his mouth, but I was already walking past him, already reaching for the backpack I'd half-packed last night when I noticed my laptop had been moved. He'd gone through my iCloud, dug into years of history, my past, my body, my intimacy, and now he wanted to moralize it? I should have been more careful, sure. But I'd forgotten how fragile men become when they realize your sexuality wasn't invented for them. Let me back up. I met Daniel a year and a half ago. He was steady, safe, different from the chaotic, unpredictable energy I'd endured in my last relationship. He liked routine, loved spreadsheets, hated clubs, said he was done with drama. I thought, finally, a grown-up. We moved in together after 10 months. He wanted to feel secure, he said. Wanted to build something real. What I didn't realize is that real to him meant obedient, available, and mysteriously a virgin despite your 20s. I should have known better. I should have noticed when he flinched every time I joked about my ex, or when he asked, how many is too many, and didn't like that I didn't flinch, or when he stopped initiating sex but got sulky every time I didn't either. He wanted the benefits of experience without the discomfort of your past. But now that he'd seen it, raw, unfiltered in motion, he couldn't unsee it. Not because it hurt him, but because it threatened him. Because the girl in those videos? She looked alive. And the girl standing in his kitchen, pregnant with his insecurity? She was done. Before Daniel, there was Zane. Zane was the kind of man who walked into a room and bent the energy around him. Loud, magnetic, half chaos and half poetry. The kind of man who could make you feel like the center of the universe, or a ghost in the same breath. We met in college, fell fast, burned bright, and scorched everything in the process. Ours wasn't a healthy love, but it was real and raw and physical in ways I didn't even have language for back then. He wanted to film us, said it was art, said he wanted to remember how I looked when I loved him. And at the time, I believed him. I said yes. Not because I was naive, but because I trusted that I was being seen, not just used. I felt like a muse, not an object. It's strange how little things like lighting and angles can feel like respect when you're 22 and in love. Some of those videos were beautiful. Some were messy. All of them were mine. Until we broke up, and I kept them on a backup drive I forgot existed. That backup had synced with my cloud last year when I changed phones. And apparently, Daniel found the archive last week, when he decided to reorganize our digital storage. Translation: he went digging through my digital underwear drawer when I wasn't home. I met Daniel a few years later. He was everything Zane wasn't: structured, consistent, painfully rational. At first it felt like healing. He never raised his voice, never skipped a date, never gaslit me or made me feel small. But slowly it became clear that what he really wanted wasn't love. He wanted a safe investment. The kind of woman you could bring home to your parents. Who wouldn't make waves. Who had just enough past to be interesting, but not so much that it would make him insecure. When we started dating, I told him I didn't believe in hiding who I was. I said I had a past. I said I'd loved hard, fallen harder, and gotten back up with bruises. He smiled and said, I love that you're honest. But he never asked questions. He liked the idea of an open woman, but not the reality of her. I didn't volunteer everything. I didn't show him the videos. Why would I? They were old echoes, artifacts, nothing I ever planned to revisit. But the more I noticed his discomfort with anything too much, the more I found myself shrinking. I stopped dancing in the kitchen in my underwear. I stopped initiating anything too spontaneous. I stopped wearing the lingerie I used to love because he never responded, just blinked and said, "That's bold." Every time I tried to bring up our lack of intimacy, he made it about me. "You always need drama. Why do you compare me to your past? Sex isn't everything." No, but connection is. And I was starving. It's not like I wanted Zane back. God, no. That relationship nearly broke me. But I missed myself in that relationship. The girl who was confident, curious, unapologetically physical, a woman who took up space. Daniel loved the polished version of me, the one that paid rent on time, meal prepped, and didn't push his boundaries. But he hated the woman I used to be. And that's the problem. Because if you only love the version of someone you've sanitized, do you really love them at all? I remember the first time I caught Daniel deleting one of my photos from his camera roll. It was a shot from a vacation, me in a red bikini, laughing with a drink in my hand. "I just didn't like the angle," he said. It was subtle. But from then on, I noticed more and more of me was disappearing. The loud, sensual, unfiltered parts. The woman with her head thrown back in full-body laughter. The girl who wasn't afraid of her own desire. By the time he found the videos, that woman barely existed in our relationship, and now he wanted to use those videos, my memories, as evidence. As leverage, as some kind of twisted comparison. Why did he get that version of you? I wanted to scream, because he held me like he was grateful. He told me I was art. He wanted all of me, even the messy, loud, irrational parts. Daniel wanted a cleaned-up version, shrink-wrapped, and safe for long-term storage. So when I saw the judgment in his eyes, it didn't surprise me. He wasn't angry that I'd been with someone before. He was angry that someone had received parts of me that he never earned. But here's the truth no one wants to say. If you make a woman feel small, don't be shocked when she stops offering you her bigness. If you treat her body like a duty, don't cry when you see someone treated it like desire. If you don't create safety, don't expect surrender. And if you find videos of who she used to be, ask yourself why she never became that with you. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His silence was a sharpened blade, slow and deliberate. He walked around the apartment for days like a ghost who hadn't made peace with his own death. When he did speak, it was clipped, chilly, deceptively polite. "I made dinner. Not sure if you're hungry or if you already ate with someone else, like old times. Your laundry's on the bed. You might want to keep the lace stuff separate. Or is that not for me anyway? Tell me again, why did you never want to do that thing with me? You seemed very enthusiastic in the videos." He weaponized my past with surgical precision. But what hurt more wasn't the judgment. It was the disappointment in myself for staying long enough to let it get this far. 3 days after he found the videos, we had the conversation. We were sitting in the living room. It was almost peaceful, the golden hour streaming in, our dog curled up near the balcony door, the smell of the pasta Daniel had cooked but refused to eat. I broke the silence. "You're not mad about the videos. You're mad I wasn't that version of me with you." He didn't deny it, just stared at the coffee table like it had answers I didn't. "I just don't get it," he said finally. "You were so passionate, so willing. What changed?" I wanted to laugh. "You did, I thought. You made it clear that version of me was too much, but I didn't say that yet." Instead, I asked, "When was the last time you looked at me like you actually wanted me?" He looked up. "Don't turn this around. I'm just saying, you never gave me the space to be that version of me. You wanted someone clean, easy. Someone who didn't come with baggage or history or videos. You loved the idea of me. But the second I got real, you flinched." He shook his head. "You're rewriting everything. I've always accepted you. But this is betrayal." "Betrayal?" I echoed, stunned. "Those videos are from years before I met you." "But you kept them," he snapped. "Don't act like that doesn't mean something." I took a deep breath. "I kept them the same way you kept your high school yearbooks. I wasn't watching them. I wasn't thinking about Zane. They're just a part of my life. A chapter I closed. One I didn't need to erase to move forward." He folded his arms. "You erased him emotionally, maybe, but not digitally. The pettiness, the absurdity, it made my blood boil." "You want to know the truth?" I said. I didn't become that version of me with you because I never felt safe enough to. You never looked at me with hunger, you looked at me with expectation, with boxes to tick. You didn't make space for spontaneity or messiness or fire. You wanted a wife before you ever saw me as a woman. His face was unreadable now, the kind of mask people wear when they're trying not to cry. But not for you, for themselves. So it's my fault, he whispered. You turned cold, and it's my fault. No, I said gently. I turned cold because I was freezing alone. The worst part? He still wanted to fix it. He offered to forgive me, offered to rebuild trust, said we could see a counselor. I almost said yes, almost let myself believe that this was salvageable. But deep down, I knew. We weren't fighting about porn, or trust, or some digital ghost of my past. We were fighting because he never saw me, only his version of me. And I was exhausted from trying to live in someone else's fantasy. That night, I packed a suitcase. He watched from the doorway. Didn't ask me to stay, didn't stop me, just whispered, I wish I'd met you sooner before you became this. I paused, hand on the doorknob. You mean before I learned boundaries? No, he said, before you got hardened, before you decided vulnerability was conditional. I stared at him for a long moment. Vulnerability isn't conditional, I said, it's earned. And you never earned it. Then I walked out. Outside, the air was sharp and honest. For the first time in weeks, I breathed without flinching. I stayed with my friend Chloe for a while. She didn't ask questions, just handed me wine and silence. The kind of silence that holds you instead of breaking you. A week later, Daniel emailed me. He didn't apologize. Not really. He said he was still processing and that he hoped I found clarity. I didn't respond, because I had. The first night I slept alone in Chloe's guest room, I cried harder than I had in years. Not because I missed Daniel, but because I was mourning something I didn't even realize I'd lost. Myself. I'd been chipping away at my edges for so long, sanding down everything too sharp, too loud, too passionate, just so I could fit inside his idea of stable love. And now, finally outside of it, I didn't know what shape I was anymore. Chloe didn't press me. She let me spiral and stew and ramble. She refilled my tea and occasionally tossed in a sharp one-liner like, he basically guilt-tripped you for not being sexually performative on command. That's not a partner. That's a chore manager with emotional issues. She was right, of course, but it still hurt. Because somewhere deep inside me, a part of me still wanted to ask, what if I really did change too much? What if I did lose something I can't get back? It wasn't just about the videos. It was what they represented. That girl in the videos, she was confident. She was radiant. She knew what she wanted. Where did she go? I started therapy again. My therapist, Tasha, a soft-voiced woman with a steel spine, asked me a question in our first session that cracked me wide open. When did you start believing that you were too much for love? I couldn't answer. Not immediately, but over time the answer started to form. It wasn't Daniel who first made me feel that way. It wasn't even Zane. It was accumulation. The way society praises good girls, who are agreeable, low maintenance, sexually available, but emotionally quiet. It was every time I'd been called dramatic, needy, too intense, too sexual, not sexual enough, too loud, too opinionated. So I shrank. Not all at once, but slowly, casually, in ways I thought were harmless. I stopped wearing bold lipstick. I stopped laughing loudly in restaurants. I stopped initiating sex unless I was sure it wouldn't be too much. I turned down my volume until I was background noise. And the worst part? I thought that made me more lovable. One afternoon, about a month after I left Daniel, I found the external hard drive with the videos again. I hadn't touched it, hadn't even opened the file directory since everything blew up. I sat at my little borrowed desk in Chloe's apartment, staring at it like it might explode. Then, quietly, I plugged it in. Not out of longing, not out of nostalgia. I just needed to remember. I watched 2 clips. That was all I could stomach. Not because they hurt, but because they felt like a time capsule. A version of me that had been buried, not because of Zane, but because of everything that came after. And for the first time, I didn't feel shame. I felt gratitude. That girl may have been messy, impulsive, reckless, but she was honest. She didn't contort herself to be acceptable. She didn't apologize for being deeply embodied in her own skin. I wasn't mourning her anymore. I was reclaiming her. Later that week, I deleted the drive, not out of guilt, but because I didn't need proof anymore. I didn't need a backup copy of who I used to be. She was back. Just in a different form. Wiser, sharper. Less willing to be consumed. I also started dating myself again. I went dancing with Chloe. I bought lingerie, not for anyone else, just because it made me feel delicious. I took a weekend trip to Santa Cruz, walked barefoot on the sand, and journaled until my hand cramped. And slowly, my appetite for life returned. Not just for romance or sex or validation, but for presence, for owning every piece of who I was, even the ones that scared men like Daniel. I even bumped into Zane randomly at a bookstore of all places. He looked older, softer, still magnetic in that dangerous way, but dimmed. We talked, caught up. He apologized, genuinely. He said, "I never made space for your no, I only ever wanted your yes." I nodded. "You gave me a taste of freedom but not safety." He nodded back. "I see that now." It wasn't closure, it was clarity. I didn't want him back. But I also didn't hate what we had. Because without it, I wouldn't have discovered the parts of me I've spent the last few years trying to reclaim. So no, Daniel didn't ruin me, he just reminded me how easy it is to disappear inside someone else's version of love. And now? I'm done disappearing. It's always when you least expect it. A Tuesday afternoon. I just finished a hot yoga class, face flushed, hair wild, tank top damp with sweat and self-approval. I was tossing my water bottle into my tote when I saw him. Daniel. Standing across the cafe patio, holding a smoothie he probably hated, wearing the same gray blazer he used to joke made him look approachably competent. Our eyes met. He looked startled, hesitant, maybe even hopeful. I didn't flinch. I gave a small, polite nod and turned back to grab my receipt, hoping that would be enough for him to understand. "We don't have to do this." But of course, he crossed the street anyway. "Samantha," he said. I turned. "Daniel." There was an awkward pause. He looked thinner, or maybe just dimmer, like he'd been walking through fog lately. "I've been meaning to reach out," he said. I smiled faintly. "You did, remember? You emailed, processing, clarity, all that." He flushed. "Yeah, I guess I didn't know how to say what I really meant." "And now you do?" He hesitated. "I was scared," he admitted. "Seeing those videos, it made me feel like I never even knew you." "You didn't," I said gently, "because you never really wanted to." He winced, but nodded. "I guess I thought I was protecting myself, but maybe I was just trying to control you." "Not maybe," I said. "You judged me for things that had nothing to do with you, then resented me for not giving you the version of me that only grows in freedom." He looked down. "You're right." Silence. Then quietly, "Do you think we could ever try again? Now that I know more, that I've changed?" I looked at him for a long time. Once upon a time I would have said yes, out of loneliness, nostalgia, guilt, hope, but not now, not after everything I'd done to find myself again, not after finally remembering that I don't owe anyone my softness unless they've earned it. I smiled, not cruel, not bitter, just final. "No, Daniel," I said, "but thank you for the clarity." Clarity? For reminding me of everything I never want again. That night, I danced barefoot in my apartment. The one I picked myself, the one with tall windows and loud music and no space for shame. I cooked dinner in just my robe and turned the music up high, not to impress anyone, not to seduce anyone, just because I felt alive. Later, I sat on the balcony with a glass of red wine and watched the city hum below me. No performance, no judgment, no pretending, just me, whole, unapologetic, enough. And that girl in the videos? She's not a relic. She's not a sin. She's not something I owe anyone an apology for. She's still here, in my spine, in my laughter, in every moment I choose freedom over approval. I don't need someone to accept my past anymore. I just need someone who knows how to hold space for my future. And until then, I'm holding it for myself.